Imagine, if you will, the soft glow of candlelight flickering against the uneven stones of a medieval chamber. Outside, a cool breeze drifts through narrow streets lined with timber-framed houses, the air carrying hints of smoke, baking bread, and, less poetically, a generous whiff of manure. The year is somewhere in the misty haze of the Middle Ages. No need to pin it down exactly. After all, time back then wasn't measured in neat little digital numbers like ours. It was more of a vague suggestion, often announced by a bell tower or the neighbor's rooster who was, statistically speaking, wrong half the time. Welcome, dear listener, to History at Bedtime. This is the moment to get comfortable. Find that perfect spot in your blankets. Let your shoulders sink into the mattress and, if you're feeling generous, gently tap that like button. If you'd like to support this journey, consider subscribing. It's like dropping a coin into a troubadour's hat, except, thankfully, I won't follow you home singing ballads. And while you're here, why not comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always fun to see this odd little community stretching across time zones like a map of tiny glowing lanterns. Now, take a slow, deep breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Let the day's noise fade into a soft, medieval hum. We're about to slip backward into a world where health advice came not from doctors in pristine white coats, but from men and women whose qualifications often included a vague apprenticeship, a solid knowledge of herbal lore, and a great deal of confidence. Tonight's journey is a peculiar one, exploring how 7 delicate, personal problems might have been addressed in the Middle Ages, a time when medicine was equal parts hope, superstition, and wild improvisation. The people of this era didn't have our modern understanding of anatomy or germs. The concept of bacteria was about as real to them as unicorns. In fact, if given the choice, many would have bet good money on unicorns being more plausible. Medicine was guided by the theory of the 4 humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, which, when balanced, supposedly made a person healthy. When unbalanced, they were thought to cause everything from fevers to fits of melancholy to, well, awkward marital difficulties. Picture a small, dimly lit room. A patient sits nervously on a wooden stool, their problem whispered like a scandalous secret. Across from them sits the midwives doctor, though, of course, that title didn't exist. Instead, this might be a local wise woman, a monk with a suspiciously detailed collection of herbal recipes, or even a barber surgeon who just finished sharpening his tools after a haircut. These practitioners were the Google search of their day, consulted for everything from headaches to heartbreaks. And, like Google, their answers varied wildly in quality. Our first condition is perhaps the most universal loss of desire, or as a medieval manuscript might phrase it, a chill in the humours of the heart. Back then, if someone confessed to feeling unmotivated in the bedroom, the explanation would often start with the balance of humours. Too much cold and dry energy, and passion might wither like a frostbitten flower. The solution? Heat things up, literally. One recommended treatment involved consuming warming foods like ginger, cinnamon, and, believe it or not, boiled onions soaked in honey. Picture a couple sitting by the fire, sharing a steaming bowl of onions while gazing into each other's eyes. Romantic? Perhaps not by modern standards, but hey, it was cheaper than roses. Another popular suggestion was to drink wine infused with exotic spices brought by traders from far-off lands. These spices were so prized, they were stored under lock and key, guarded as fiercely as a modern chocolate stash in a shared office fridge. Dawn begins to creep across the horizon, staining the sky with soft streaks of pink and gold. In the healer's hut, the embers of the fire glow faintly, casting a warm, sleepy light over shelves lined with jars of mysterious powders and dried herbs. Outside, roosters begin their enthusiastic but inaccurate announcements of the new day. The medieval village stirs awake, but our story lingers in the hushed quiet of early morning. The fifth element on our journey is both ancient and enduring: infidelity. In a world where marriages were often arranged for political or economic reasons, true love was frequently left to wander elsewhere. When suspicions arose, the consequences could be severe, especially for women who bore the brunt of both social judgment and legal punishment. Our medieval sex doctor might be called upon not only to treat physical issues, but also to serve as a kind of private detective, uncovering hidden truths through remedies that were as much about theatre as about medicine. One common method involved love potions, which were not so much magical elixirs as they were highly spiced wines or teas. These drinks often contained ingredients like cinnamon, ginger, and honey, flavors designed to warm the body and perhaps the heart. The idea was simple: strengthen a fading bond through shared ritual and sensory pleasure. But when trust was truly broken, more dramatic measures were taken. In some regions, there were ceremonies where a suspected unfaithful partner would be required to undergo a kind of trial by ordeal. One particularly peculiar practice involved forcing the accused to drink a bitter concoction while swearing an oath of fidelity. If they vomited, it was taken as proof of guilt. If they didn't, they were considered innocent, or at least very good at holding their stomach. There's a curious cultural tidbit here. Certain medieval texts recommend sprinkling powdered basil under the bed to prevent straying affections. Why basil? Specifically, no one knows for sure. Historians suspect it may have been chosen simply because it was fragrant, symbolic, or perhaps just conveniently available in the garden. For those seeking to rekindle passion rather than punish betrayal, more tender remedies existed. Couples might be advised to take long walks together, sharing stories and laughter under the moonlight. While this advice sounds strikingly modern, it was often accompanied by more eccentric instructions, like carrying a smooth stone in one's pocket to symbolize stability in the relationship. Superstition and sentiment, hand in hand. Our healer, meanwhile, would move between these roles: apothecary, counselor, and occasional arbiter of justice, navigating the tangled web of human emotions with a mix of practicality and poetic flair. As daylight brightens, another problem arrives at the door: unwanted pregnancies, a topic fraught with danger and secrecy in the medieval world. For women, the stakes were unimaginably high. There were no reliable contraceptives, and the consequences of an unplanned pregnancy could range from social disgrace to life-threatening complications during childbirth. Preventive measures existed, though they were unreliable at best. Certain herbs, such as pennyroyal and rue, were believed to have contraceptive properties. These were brewed into teas or applied as poultices, though the dosages were imprecise and often dangerously toxic. Still, in the absence of better options, they were used with quiet desperation. More symbolic practices were also common. Some women carried small charms carved with protective symbols, hoping to ward off conception through spiritual means. Others relied on timing, guided by the phases of the moon or the advice of local wise women. These methods were more about giving a sense of control than actual efficacy. When prevention failed, secrecy became paramount. Midwives, who were often trusted figures in their communities, sometimes acted as discreet confidants, offering advice and assistance away from prying eyes. Their knowledge of herbs and the female body was unparalleled, though it was often dismissed or even condemned by male-dominated medical institutions. One particularly heartbreaking record describes a midwife who kept a small journal of lost daughters, listing the names of young women who had sought her help. This fragile piece of history reminds us that behind every remedy, no matter how strange, there were real lives, real fears, and real courage. As the sun rises fully, casting golden light across the fields, our healer steps outside to breathe the cool morning air. The village comes alive with movement, bakers carrying fresh loaves, farmers heading to their fields, children chasing each other through narrow alleys. Life goes on as it always does, weaving joy and sorrow into the same intricate tapestry. And you, dear listener, are part of that tapestry now. As you lie in the quiet of your own room, the hum of modern life blending with echoes of the past, let your breath slow. The story continues, gently, softly, like a river winding through centuries, carrying with it the dreams and desires of countless souls who came before. But if dietary adjustments didn't work, there were stronger methods. Some practitioners advised carrying certain amulets or charms. One particularly bizarre recommendation involved wearing a tiny dried rabbit heart in a silk pouch near the chest, as it was believed to ignite one's inner fire. Historians still debate whether anyone actually did this, or if it was the medieval equivalent of a cruel joke published in a local pamphlet. Of course, not all cures were so mystical. In certain monasteries, monks carefully documented herbal remedies for various ailments, including low desire. These remedies often included plants like yarrow or nettle, boiled into teas so bitter that one could reasonably argue the mere act of drinking them proved dedication to solving the problem. As you drift deeper into this story, notice how the world softens around the edges. The cobblestone streets, the flickering torchlight, the whispered conversations in darkened hallways, all fade into a gentle hum, like a lullaby sung by history itself. And so, our medieval sex doctor wipes their hands on a linen cloth, ready for the next challenge. Our second ailment is a bit more, shall we say, visible, impotence. Back then, this was not just a private concern. It could be a matter of public record, especially in noble marriages, where heirs were expected like seasonal harvests. If a marriage remained childless, whispers would soon circulate through the castle halls faster than a plague rat through a grain store. The remedies for impotence were as varied as they were alarming. Some were purely dietary, like consuming roasted sparrow brains, or, wait for it, boiled wolf genitalia. Yes, you heard that correctly. The belief was simple. By eating parts of a virile animal, one might absorb its vigor. This logic was applied across many cultures, and frankly, it's one of those ideas best left in the past. For those who preferred not to expand their culinary horizons, there were potions and salves. A medieval apothecary might mix ground herbs with animal fats and apply them to certain strategic areas. Whether this was effective is questionable, though it likely provided a placebo effect, or at least an excuse to avoid more invasive treatments. There were also ceremonial options. A couple might visit a church to pray for divine intervention, sometimes participating in rituals that blended religious fervor with symbolic acts. In some regions, a husband suspected of impotence could be required to swear an oath before a council, proclaiming his ability to fulfill marital duties. The humiliation alone might have been enough to cure the issue, or at least encourage more discretion. As we leave this section behind, imagine the flicker of firelight dimming, the murmur of voices fading, and the slow, rhythmic sound of distant bells tolling the hour. Our journey has only just begun, and there are many more peculiar remedies to explore. But for now, let your breath match the slow beat of history's heart as we drift onward to the next chapter of medieval medicine. Section 2. The night deepens over our medieval village, stars glimmering faintly through a veil of smoke rising from hearth fires. Somewhere in the distance, a lone dog barks, perhaps chasing away imaginary intruders, or perhaps just bored, as medieval dogs were often tied up near doors like furry security alarms. Inside the healer's chamber, the air grows thick with the mingling scents of herbs, tallow, and a faint hint of desperation. Our third condition is excessive desire, a problem that, surprisingly, worried as many people back then, as lack of desire. In a world shaped by strict religious teachings, passion was considered dangerous, a temptation that could lead straight to sin. Too much desire wasn't merely inconvenient, it was a spiritual crisis. To cool such unruly urges, practitioners leaned heavily on the theory of humors, since desire was linked to heat and moisture. The solution was to apply cold and dry elements. This could mean drinking diluted vinegar, consuming lettuce. Yes, lettuce was thought to calm the passions, or even taking cold baths, which sounds almost like an ancient spa day. If your spa also included a stern lecture from the local priest, monks and nuns, bound by vows of chastity, were particularly concerned with this issue. Many monasteries cultivated gardens filled with cooling plants like violets and sage, used both for medicine and spiritual symbolism. There's a lovely, if slightly awkward, record of a monk advising his fellow brothers to sleep on hard wooden boards to discourage unholy stirrings of the flesh. Comfort was clearly not a high priority. One rather peculiar remedy involved wearing a belt studded with tiny spikes on the inside, a device meant to remind the wearer, quite literally, of the pain of temptation. It's a bit like having a conscience that pokes you in the ribs, only much less metaphorical. Whether this worked is unclear, though it certainly discouraged lounging. The fourth ailment we'll explore tonight involves fertility struggles, a concern that transcends time and culture. In the Middle Ages, infertility was often blamed squarely on women, though men were not entirely exempt. Treatments varied wildly, from sincere attempts at herbal remedies to elaborate rituals that today sound more like performance art. For women, one common approach was to drink a concoction made from certain seeds and roots believed to open the womb. These mixtures often included pomegranate seeds, fennel, and sometimes rather mysterious ingredients labeled only as special powder. The identity of these powders remains a mystery, though historians suspect they were likely ground herbs or minerals. Men faced their own treatments, some of which veered into the bizarre. One prescription involved standing in a river at dawn while chanting specific phrases, then quickly eating a raw egg before the sun fully rose. The logic behind this is lost to us, but one suspects it had more to do with ritual than biology. Interestingly, fertility concerns weren't just medical, they were also deeply social and political. A noble woman, unable to produce an heir, risked not only personal sorrow, but also the collapse of alliances. There are records of entire villages participating in fertility ceremonies, gathering around bonfires, singing and dancing in hopes of blessing a particular couple. In these moments, medicine and magic blurred into a communal act of hope. And then there's one delightfully odd tidbit. In certain regions, couples were advised to keep a live weasel under the bed during conception attempts. The reasoning was, unsurprisingly, never fully explained, and historians still debate whether this was a serious recommendation or a medieval prank that got wildly out of hand. As our narrative flows gently onward, picture the flickering shadows on the chamber walls, the soft rustle of dried herbs hanging from the rafters, and the rhythmic crackle of the fire. The medieval sex doctor leans back, weary but determined, ready to face the next challenge with equal parts wisdom, superstition, and theatrical flair. Outside, the village sleeps. Somewhere, a mill wheel turns lazily in the night, its creak blending with the slow breathing of the world itself. And you, dear listener, are part of that ancient rhythm now, drifting deeper into the story, your thoughts winding softly around images of candlelight, whispered hopes, and a strangely tender humanity of those who lived so long ago. The air grows colder as night deepens, wrapping our medieval village in a silvery blanket of moonlight. The healer's hut feels like a world unto itself now, a small warm bubble against the chill. Shadows sway on the plaster walls as bundles of dried herbs dangle overhead, releasing faint earthy scents when stirred by a stray draught. Outside, the distant hoot of an owl reminds us that this is still a world ruled by nature's rhythms, unpredictable and untamed. Inside, though, our focus turns to the next delicate matter, unpleasant odors of the body, particularly those associated with intimacy. In an age without modern plumbing, deodorant, or even the casual luxury of a hot shower, Such concerns were not merely about personal comfort, they were matters of health, reputation, and sometimes even morality. A poorly scented body could be seen as evidence of spiritual decay, a sign that one's inner humors were out of balance, or that one had angered a saint somewhere along the line. The medieval response to this issue was surprisingly nuanced. Bathing was actually encouraged in many places, though not always daily, and certainly not with our modern standards of temperature-controlled bliss. Communal bathhouses were common in larger towns, where people gathered to wash in large wooden tubs filled with water, infused with herbs like lavender, sage, or rosemary. Imagine the scene. Villagers chatting while steam curls upward, the air rich with a mingled scents of flowers, and slightly too many humans in one room. It was less day spa and more theme to building exercise with occasional fleas. For private remedies, the go-to solution was perfume, though not in the way we think of it today. Oils infused with herbs or flowers were rubbed directly onto the skin, often in areas considered most strategically significant. Rose water, in particular, was a popular choice. Wealthier individuals might wear small pomanders filled with fragrant spices, suspended from belts or necklaces. These served both as deodorants and as portable talismans against disease. The logic was simple. If bad smells carried illness, then good smells might fend it off. A theory as elegant as it was inaccurate. One particularly obscure tidbit comes from a 14th century manuscript that suggests chewing parsley leaves not just for fresh breath, but also for, and I quote, sweetness of the whole body. Whether this claim was based on observation or wishful thinking remains unclear, though parsley sales likely skyrocketed in hopeful towns. Of course, there were also less pleasant options. Some healers prescribed washing with vinegar or even urine, believing the acidity would cleanse impurities. And while this may sound horrifying to our modern sensibilities, keep in mind that vinegar was also used to sterilize wounds and preserve food. Urine, on the other hand, well, let's just say it had a complicated resume. As you picture these medieval rituals, imagine yourself reclining near the fire, wrapped in a thick wool blanket. The flickering flames blur the line between centuries, and you can almost smell the rosemary and lavender drifting through the air. It's easy to forget that behind the oddities and eccentricities of these treatments, there was a universal human desire to be close to another person without embarrassment or discomfort. Some things, after all, never change, but our medieval sex doctor has no time to linger on pleasant scents, for the next challenge is both deeply intimate and surprisingly public. Performance anxiety. Yes, even in a time of knights and castles, people still worried about living up to expectations in the bedroom. The difference was that in the Middle Ages, these anxieties could have far-reaching consequences. Imagine a young groom on his wedding night, knowing that his entire family, and possibly the entire village, is waiting for news of the marriage being consummated. This was not just a private affair, it was a legal requirement. In some cases, witnesses were even expected to be nearby, ready to confirm that all went according to plan. Talk about pressure. To calm such nerves, medieval healers offered a variety of remedies. Some were simple and soothing, like warm baths infused with calming herbs, such as chamomile or valerian root. These baths were often accompanied by soft music played on lutes or harps, creating a tranquil atmosphere. Picture the flicker of candlelight on water, the gentle strum of strings, and a patient slowly unwinding after a day of public scrutiny. Other treatments leaned heavily into symbolism. A popular ritual involved the couple exchanging gifts of bread and wine before retiring to their chamber. The act represented unity and abundance, but it also served as a kind of psychological comfort food. After all, who doesn't feel a bit braver after a good snack? Of course, there were also less helpful approaches. Some healers prescribed amulets inscribed with complex astrological symbols to be worn during the act itself. Whether this was actually reassuring or simply distracting is hard to say. Historians still debate whether these talismans were viewed as sacred tools or merely trendy accessories. One particularly fascinating account tells of a medieval physician who encouraged anxious men to recite a specific prayer rhythmically during intimacy. The idea was that focusing on the prayer would quiet the mind and steady the body. It's a bit like medieval mindfulness, though considerably less discreet. As we move gently onward, imagine the world outside the chamber fading into stillness. The streets are empty now, save for the occasional shuffle of a night watchman making his rounds. The moon hangs low, casting pale light over rooftops. Inside, our healer tidies their tools, preparing for whatever strange requests tomorrow may bring. The morning deepens into full day, sunlight spilling through narrow windows, painting dusty beams of light across the healer's chamber. Outside, the village hums to life in earnest now. Chickens cluck indignantly as children chase them. Carts creak under the weight of goods being hauled to market, and the distant clanging of a blacksmith's hammer rings like a heartbeat for the town. Inside, however, our medieval sex doctor's space remains quiet and focused, a sanctuary where matters too delicate for public conversation are addressed in murmured tones. Our sixth ailment brings us into the realm of sexual pain, a problem that could strike anyone but was most often and unfairly laid at women's feet. In an age where medical understanding of the body was profoundly limited, explanations for such pain ranged from the mildly plausible to the wildly imaginative. Some believed it was caused by an overabundance of cold and dry humors, while others blamed wandering wombs. Yes, you heard that correctly. The idea that a uterus could literally move around inside the body, causing discomfort wherever it roamed. To address these concerns, treatments were designed both to soothe and to, shall we say, coax the wandering organ back into its proper place. Warm compresses made with chamomile or rose petals were often applied to the lower abdomen, accompanied by soft music or chanting meant to calm the patient's spirit. In some cases, aromatic herbs like sage or thyme were burned nearby, the rising smoke believed to entice the uterus back downward, like a cat responding to the smell of food. More peculiar remedies existed as well. Some texts describe placing sweet-smelling substances near the vagina to char the womb bag. while simultaneously applying foul-smelling materials near the nose to drive it away from the upper body. Imagine a woman lying perfectly still, lavender beneath her, and rotten onions waved before her face, all while a healer mutters encouragingly. It must have been a rather surreal experience, somewhere between a spa treatment and a bizarre theatrical performance. For men experiencing sexual pain, the approach was somewhat different. Healers would examine lifestyle factors, diet, stress, and even the alignment of the stars. A particularly energetic Mars or Venus in one's horoscope could apparently wreak havoc on the body. Remedies included drinking calming teas of valerian root, applying warm oils to affected areas, and, in more severe cases, undergoing bloodletting to rebalance the humors. This was often done at very specific points on the body, as indicated by medieval medical charts that looked like strange maps of human suffering. There's an oddly touching note here. Some surviving manuscripts reveal that healers often encouraged couples to attend treatments together. The idea was that mutual care and understanding were just as vital as physical remedies. In a world where so much was uncertain, this small act of shared empathy stands out as profoundly human. As we linger on this image, the healer gently extinguishes a candle, letting a curl of smoke rise lazily into the sunlit air. Outside, the marketplace grows louder. The smell of baking bread wafts through the open window, mingling with a sharper scent of herbs drying on the rafters. Life continues, chaotic and fragrant and endlessly complicated. But there's little time to rest, because our seventh and final issue is perhaps the most challenging of all: sexual trauma and emotional scars. Though medieval language lacked our modern psychological terms, the effects of trauma were no less real. A patient might come to the healer with a melancholy of the spirit, unable to find joy or connection. These wounds, though invisible, could shape lives just as powerfully as any physical ailment. Medieval responses to such suffering were often rooted in spirituality. A patient might be encouraged to make a pilgrimage to a holy site, believing that proximity to sacred relics could heal not only the body but also the soul. Shrines dedicated to saints associated with love and healing became popular destinations where candles were lit and prayers whispered in hopes of finding peace. Music, too, played a role. The soothing tones of a lute or harp were thought to calm the mind, much like modern meditation apps. Though considerably less portable, storytelling was another form of therapy, with traveling bards weaving tales of heroes overcoming adversity. By listening to these stories, patients were gently reminded that they were not alone in their struggles. Of course, there were less poetic approaches as well. Some communities believed that evil spirits caused emotional pain, leading to rituals of exorcism or purification. These could range from simple blessings to elaborate ceremonies involving incense, chanting, and symbolic objects. While these practices may seem dramatic today, they often provided a sense of closure and renewal for those who participated. One obscure but fascinating tidbit involves the use of dream interpretation. Certain healers kept journals of their patients' dreams, looking for patterns that might reveal the source of distress. A recurring dream of drowning, for instance, might be seen as a sign of being overwhelmed by humors or by life itself. Treatments were then tailored to address not only the body but also the subconscious mind, a surprisingly holistic approach for the time. As the day reaches its peak, sunlight flooding the chamber, our healer pauses for a moment of quiet reflection. These matters are never simple. They touch on love, shame, hope, and the fragile thread of connection that binds people together. The remedies may seem strange to us now, but beneath the odd ingredients and rituals lies a truth that transcends centuries: the desire to heal, to comfort, and to be understood. The bells of the village church ring out, marking the hour. Somewhere, a child laughs. Somewhere else, a merchant haggles loudly over a sack of grain. And in the midst of it all, life continues, as messy and mysterious as ever. Afternoon settles gently over the village, bathing the rooftops in warm golden light. The bustle of the marketplace begins to soften as people return to their homes, arms full of goods and minds full of gossip. The healer's hut grows quiet again, though the air still carries the faint hum of voices from outside like a distant melody. Inside, our medieval sex doctor takes stock of their tools and ingredients. Small clay jars labeled with looping, spidery handwriting line the shelves, their contents ranging from dried petals to mysterious powders of dubious origin. Bundles of herbs hang from the ceiling, their silhouettes swaying slightly in the breeze. It's a place of order amid the surrounding chaos, though the order is of a very medieval sort. More controlled clutter than sparkling laboratory. The healer's thoughts turn now to the legacy of these practices. While many of the remedies we've discussed might seem quaint or even laughable today, they were often rooted in genuine care. For every bizarre ritual involving rabbit hearts or moonlit rivers, there was an earnest attempt to ease suffering. In their own way, these healers were pioneers, laying the groundwork for the more scientific approaches that would come centuries later. Two significant historical facts stand out here. First, the establishment of medieval universities in places like Bologna, Paris, and Oxford during the 12th and 13th centuries. These institutions began to formalize medical training, creating a more standardized system of knowledge. Though their teachings were still heavily influenced by ancient texts like those of Galen and Hippocrates, they represented a crucial step toward modern medicine. Second, the translation movement that swept across Europe during this period. Scholars in Spain and the Middle East translated medical texts from Arabic and Greek into Latin, vastly expanding the pool of available knowledge. Many of the herbs and techniques used by medieval healers were first described in these texts, connecting far-flung cultures through the shared human quest for health. Amid these sweeping changes, local healers continued their quiet work. They adapted, borrowing ideas from new sources while holding fast to traditional wisdom. This blend of old and new created a uniquely medieval approach, part science, part magic, part community ritual. An interesting cultural detail emerges here. In some villages, the healer's hut doubled as a kind of informal gathering place. People would come not only for treatment, but also to share news, seek advice, or simply escape the noise of the outside world. In this way, The healer became both a medical practitioner and a keeper of stories, weaving together the physical and emotional threads of the community. As the sun begins to dip toward the horizon, casting long, slanting shadows, our healer steps outside for a breath of fresh air. The sky is painted in shades of orange and purple, a reminder that another day is ending, another cycle complete. Birds wheel overhead, their cries blending with the soft murmur of evening prayers drifting from the church. The day moves on, and a wealthy merchant arrives, accompanied by a servant carrying a heavy chest. The merchant's complaint is both physical and deeply humiliating. He suffers from persistent itching, a condition that makes intimacy with his wife nearly impossible. The healer's mind runs through possibilities: poor hygiene, lice, a reaction to the new exotic fabrics the merchant has been importing from distant lands. In medieval times, skin conditions were often blamed on an imbalance of humors or even moral failings. It was believed that sin could manifest physically, marking the body with visible reminders of guilt. The examination is careful and respectful. The healer notices that the merchant's garments are dyed a vibrant shade of red, a color achieved using certain imported minerals known to cause irritation. The diagnosis, then, is both simple and surprisingly modern, a reaction to clothing. The treatment begins with cleansing baths, using warm water infused with soothing herbs like calendula and chamomile. The merchant is also instructed to wear undyed linen until the irritation subsides. While this advice sounds entirely reasonable to us, in the merchant's eyes, it is almost revolutionary. After all, bright colors are a mark of wealth and status. To appear in plain white linen feels like a small social death. To soothe his pride as well as his skin, the healer creates a medicinal ointment scented with rose oil and honey. The honey helps with healing, while the rose oil restores a sense of dignity. The merchant's relief is palpable as he departs, leaving behind a generous donation in thanks. One peculiar historical fact surfaces here. In some medieval towns, public bathhouses doubled as social clubs. People of all classes would gather to bathe, gossip, and even conduct business deals while soaking in herbal-infused tubs. It was, in many ways, a precursor to modern spas, though with considerably more risk of infection. As the heart grows quiet again, the healer allows a moment of stillness. The world outside is bustling, but here, in this small sanctuary, time seems to move at its own gentle pace. The day is far from over, and the sun is still high, pouring golden light through the window like liquid warmth. The healer's thoughts linger on the patients seen today, the hopeful, the fearful, the quietly brave. Each remedy given, each story heard, becomes part of a larger tapestry, a living record of human resilience. And you, dear listener, are part of that tapestry too. As you listen, perhaps drowsy now, perhaps already halfway to sleep, you carry these echoes of the past into your dreams. They mingle with your own memories, blurring the line between history and imagination. The village grows still. Lamps flicker to life in windows, one by one, like stars descending to earth. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks softly, then settles down again. The world exhales. Our journey is far from over, but for now, let's linger here, in this moment of twilight, where the past feels close enough to touch, and the night holds promises yet unspoken. Twilight drapes itself over the village like a well-worn woolen cloak, soft and slightly scratchy. The last streaks of sunlight fade into deep indigo, and the village exhales into quiet. Smoke curls from chimneys, glowing faintly as if the houses themselves were keeping secrets warm by the fire. Crickets hum from the edges of the fields, their steady rhythm a reminder that even in the stillness, life continues. Inside the healer's hut, the world feels smaller, closer. A single beeswax candle flickers on the work table, casting tall, unsteady shadows that make jars and bottles look like silent spectators to the evening's work. The healer sits with hands folded for a moment, listening to the hush of the night. It has been a long day of tending to ailments of both body and soul, but there is always one more patient, one more whispered confession waiting to be heard. Tonight's first visitor is a young woman, face pale and eyes clouded with worry. She speaks haltingly of a strange malady, nightmares of intimacy, dreams so vivid they leave her trembling long after waking, in a world where dreams are messages from the divine, or worse, from darker forces. These visions are no small matter. Medieval thinkers took dreams very seriously. Theories about their origins ranged from humors out of balance to demons sneaking in through the ears at night. To treat such dreams, healers often combined practical advice with elaborate rituals. The patient might be given a sachet of calming herbs, lavender, chamomile, or valerian, to tuck beneath her pillow. The scent was meant to soothe the mind and, perhaps, to ward off intrusive spirits. At the same time, a ritual cleansing might be prescribed. This involved bathing in water infused with sacred herbs, while a priest or wise woman murmured protective prayers. The water would then be poured outside at a crossroads, a symbolic act of casting away the troubling dreams. Crossroads were believed to be places of power, where the mundane world and the spiritual realm brushed shoulders. For those with recurring nightmares, there were more unusual remedies. One old manuscript suggests that the patient draw a small circle of chalk around the bed each night, leaving a single gap in the circle for good spirits to enter and bad spirits to leave. Imagine lying in a creaky bed, knowing you are quite literally winged in chalk protection, hoping that the correct spirits read the sign. Interestingly, historians have found conflicting evidence about how common these practices truly were. Some texts suggest they were widespread, while others hint that they were rare and considered slightly eccentric. Historians still debate whether these rituals were everyday occurrences or more like the medieval version of a niche wellness trend. As the young woman leaves, clutching her herb sachet like a lifeline, the healer turns to their next visitor, a young knight, shoulders squared but eyes downcast. His problem is both physical and spiritual, guilt and desire tangled together, a burden heavy enough to bend even a warrior's proud stance. In the chivalric world of the Middle Ages, knights were supposed to embody honor and restraint. Desire was natural but dangerous, a temptation that could lead to ruin if not carefully managed. This young man's turmoil stems from a forbidden love, a story as old as time and as complicated as the knots in his chainmail. The healer listens without judgment, nodding slowly. The treatment here is less about herbs and more about confession and symbolism. The knight is instructed to create a small token representing his desire, a simple carved figure of wood, perhaps, or a scrap of ribbon. He must then bury it beneath the flowering tree at sunrise, a symbolic act of letting go. While this may not solve the problem in a strictly medical sense, it gives shape to feelings that otherwise might fester. For physical symptoms of stress, the healer prescribes a tea of calming herbs to be sipped slowly before sleep. The knight is also encouraged to engage in quiet, repetitive tasks like polishing his armor or mending his cloak. These activities serve as a form of medieval meditation, distracting the mind while the body rests. As he departs, the healer watches him disappear into the gathering dark, a lone figure framed by the pale light of the moon. The candle gutters low, its flame shrinking like a heartbeat before renewal. Outside, the village grows quiet. The last market stalls close, and shutters are drawn against the cool night air. A soft wind stirs the trees, carrying with it the scents of hay, wood smoke, and distant cooking fires. The healer inhales deeply, grounding themselves in the familiar rhythms of life. There is comfort, even in imperfection. The night is far from over. The moon rides high now, a pale lantern casting silver over the rooftops. The healer's hut, a small island of light in the darkness, hums with quiet purpose. Inside, the work table is neatly arranged. Wooden bowls, sharp knives, bundles of dried herbs, and a small pot of honey, glistening like captured sunlight. Honey, in the Middle Ages, was prized not only for its sweetness, but also for its healing properties. In many ways, it was the duct tape of its time, used for everything from soothing sore throats to dressing wounds. Tonight's focus shifts toward healing the bonds between partners, a task as delicate as stitching fine silk. While many ailments brought to the healer were individual, others belonged to couples, entangled like threads on a loom. A young couple enters, their hands clasped tightly, but their expressions strained. They speak of drifting apart, of arguments and silences that stretch too long. The healer listens carefully, nodding at each detail. Relationships were as complex in the Middle Ages as they are now, though the language to describe them was different. The prescribed remedy is as much ritual as medicine. First, the couple is given a shared task, tending a small fire together for 7 nights. The fire represents their relationship, requiring attention and care. Each evening, they must gather wood, light the flame, and sit together in silence while it burns. No words, only the quiet companionship of shared responsibility. It's a practice that sounds strikingly modern, though its roots lie deep in medieval symbolism. Alongside this ritual, the healer provides a scented oil made from rose, myrrh, and frankincense. The couple is instructed to anoint their hands with the oil each night before tending the fire. The aroma fills their small home, creating a sensory reminder of the bond they are trying to strengthen. This blending of physical and emotional care reflects the holistic worldview of the time. One particularly charming detail: the healer includes a small sprig of rosemary tied with ribbon to be hung above the couple's bed. Rosemary was believed to encourage fidelity and harmony, its sharp, clean scent a subtle guardian against discord. Even today, the plant carries echoes of this ancient symbolism. As the couple leaves, hope flickering in their eyes like the candlelight, the healer feels a quiet satisfaction. Not every remedy needs to be elaborate. Sometimes the simplest rituals hold the most power. The next visitor brings a more somber challenge: grief after loss. A widow enters, her face lined with sorrow, her hands clutching a small piece of cloth that once belonged to her late husband. In the Middle Ages, grief was both a personal and public affair. Mourning customs were highly structured, with rules about clothing, behavior, and even the length of time one was expected to mourn. But behind the rituals lay raw, unspoken pain. The healer offers the widow a cup of warm wine spiced with cinnamon and honey, a drink meant to soothe both body and spirit. As she sips, the healer begins a gentle ritual of storytelling. Tales are told of lovers reunited in dreams, of souls watching over the living from beyond. These stories do not erase grief, but they offer a framework for it, a way to hold sorrow without being consumed. An herbal sachet is prepared, containing marjoram and lavender. The widow is instructed to place it beneath her pillow to encourage restful sleep. Dreams, in this context, are seen not as omens, but as bridges between worlds. If she dreams of her beloved, it is considered a blessing, a sign that love endures. One fascinating historical note here: in certain regions, widows were encouraged to weave their grief into physical objects, embroidered cloths, carved wooden figures, or simple strings of beads. These items served as tangible representations of sorrow, allowing the mourner to externalize their feelings. It's an approach surprisingly similar to modern art therapy. As the widow departs, moving slowly but with a slightly lighter step, the healer gazes at the candle's flame. It dances in the still air, fragile yet persistent. Outside, the night stretches on, stars scattered like seeds across the dark soil of the sky. The village sleeps now, wrapped in dreams both sweet and bitter. Somewhere, a dog stirs and settles again. Somewhere else, a lover whispers a promise. And in the healer's hut, time seems to pause, caught between the ancient heartbeat of the past and the gentle breath of the present. The medieval sex doctor leans back, closing tired eyes for just a moment, knowing that tomorrow will bring new stories, new challenges, and the eternal dance of care and connection. The village lies deep in the velvet grip of night now, blanketed in a stillness so complete it feels almost sacred. A lone church bell tolls the late hour, the sound carrying far across the fields like a gentle warning to stay indoors. Most villagers are asleep, cocooned in their dreams, but here in the healer's hut, the world is very much awake. The single beeswax candle has burned low, its flame tiny but steady, like the last ember in a hearth. The healer adjusts a stack of worn manuscripts, their pages filled with looping script and faded illustrations. These are precious texts, copied by hand over decades, perhaps centuries. Each page holds recipes for remedies, observations about the body, and snippets of half-remembered magic. This blending of knowledge is typical of the Middle Ages, part science, part superstition, all woven together like the threads of a tapestry. Tonight's focus turns to unspoken fears, the ailments people didn't always have the courage to voice aloud. One such fear was sterility, the silent absence of new life in a world that depended on children not only for emotional fulfillment, but also for survival. A noble couple arrives, cloaked in fine wool and guarded expressions. Their lack of an heir has become a matter of political importance, whispered about by courtiers and rivals alike. To be barren was not merely a private sorrow, it was a potential threat to lineage and power. In a time when dynasties rose and fell on the strength of bloodlines, this was no small matter. The healer listens carefully as they speak. Modern listeners might expect a purely medical response. But here, in the medieval world, the approach is layered. There is ritual to appease unseen forces. There is herbal knowledge passed down through generations. And there is symbolism to help the couple reshape their understanding of their struggle. The ritual begins at dawn. In a secluded garden, the couple walks barefoot over dewy grass, carrying a small basket of pomegranate seeds and fennel, a combination thought to promote fertility. They scatter the seeds in a circle, then sit quietly as the sun rises, hands entwined. The symbolism is powerful. Seeds planted, a future hoped for. Afterward, they drink a warm brew of honey, cinnamon, and goat's milk, a mixture believed to nourish the body's inner humors. Whether it works physiologically is doubtful, but the shared act creates a moment of intimacy and hope. An obscure medieval tidbit emerges here. In some regions, couples were advised to whisper their wishes to a carved wooden figurine representing fertility, then bury it beneath the threshold of their home. This was meant to invite new life into the household. Historians are divided on whether this was a widespread practice or more of a localized folk custom, but its imagery is striking, a silent plea to the earth itself. As the couple departs, their faces reflect a subtle shift. Perhaps nothing tangible has changed, but their hearts are a little lighter, their bond a little stronger. In this world, where so much was beyond human control, belief itself was a form of medicine. The healer takes a deep breath, letting the moment settle. Outside, the night breeze rustles the leaves, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and wildflowers. For a brief instant, the boundary between past and present feels porous, like mist over water. But the stillness is soon broken by a knock at the door. This time, the patient is alone, a young man, gaunt and pale, with dark circles under his eyes. He speaks of overwhelming shame, of desires he has been told are sinful. In a society ruled by strict moral codes, such feelings could be crushing. The healer does not condemn. Instead, they offer a listening ear and a gentle remedy. A small sachet of calming herbs, lavender, marjoram, and sage, is given to him to be worn close to the heart. The act is symbolic. The herbs soothe the body, while the gesture itself acknowledges his humanity. He is also encouraged to create a safe place in his mind, a mental sanctuary where judgment cannot reach him. This advice may sound modern, almost like guided meditation, but similar practices existed in medieval spirituality. Monks often visualized heavenly gardens during prayer, using imagination as a tool for comfort and resilience. Before he leaves, the healer lights a small candle and says softly, "Even the darkest night ends with dawn." The words are not in any textbook, but they are a kind of medicine too. The door closes, leaving the hut quiet once more. Outside, the first faint hint of dawn begins to touch the horizon, a promise of renewal after the long night. The rooster's crow splits the early morning calm. Predictably premature, medieval roosters, much like modern alarm clocks, were often enthusiastically wrong about the actual time. Still, their call rouses the village. Doors creak open, and smoke begins to rise from chimneys as fires are stoked back to life. The world awakens, stretching and yawning like a sleepy giant. Inside the healer's hut, a new day begins. The embers in the hearth are coaxed back to flame, and the scent of warm porridge mingles with the earthy aroma of drying herbs. The healer sits for a moment, sipping a cup of nettle tea before the first patient of the day arrives. This visitor is a merchant's wife, her face flushed with both embarrassment and determination. She speaks of marital discord, a problem as old as marriage itself. Her husband, she says, has grown distant and irritable, quick to anger and slow to laughter. She worries that their bond is fraying beyond repair. The healer considers this carefully. In the Middle Ages, relationships were not purely romantic unions. They were economic and social partnerships as well. A failing marriage could ripple through the entire household, affecting servants, children, and even business dealings. The prescribed treatment is twofold. First, a practical remedy, a tea made from lemon balm, rosemary, and honey, to be shared by the couple each evening. Lemon balm was believed to lift the spirits, rosemary to strengthen memory and love, and honey to sweeten the heart. The act of sitting together to drink the tea becomes its own quiet ritual, a moment of reconnection. Second, a symbolic task. The wife is instructed to weave a small cloth using threads of 3 colors: red for passion, white for trust, and green for renewal. Each evening, as the couple sips their tea, she will add a few stitches. When the cloth is complete, they will hang it above their bed as a visible reminder of their efforts. This blend of tangible and intangible care is quintessentially medieval. An odd historical note here: in some regions, couples in conflict were advised to sleep with a loaf of bread under the bed to absorb quarrels. The following morning, the bread would be given to animals or buried, symbolically removing the anger from the household. Whether this was effective is questionable, though it likely provided an entertaining story for future generations. The merchant's wife departs with her instructions, visibly lighter. Her steps, though, are soon replaced by the heavy tread of the next visitor, a traveling minstrel. His problem is more physical than emotional. After weeks on the road, he suffers from persistent soreness, which he worries will end his career. Without his voice and his nimble fingers, he has nothing to offer. The healer examines him carefully. In an era without antibiotics or advanced diagnostics, the focus is on balancing humors and easing discomfort. A warm poultice of rosemary and comfrey is prepared, applied to the hands to soothe inflammation. The minstrel is also advised to rest his voice, speaking only when necessary and avoiding strong wine or overly spiced food, though whether he will follow this advice is uncertain. For his spirit, the healer offers something less tangible, a tale. They recount the story of a legendary bard who once lost his voice for 7 years, only to regain it on the very night he sang beneath a flowering tree. Whether the story is fact or fiction doesn't matter. What matters is the hope it plants. As the minstrel departs, humming softly despite his sore throat, the healer reflects on the day so far. These problems may seem small in the grand scheme of things, but to those who bear them, they are the entire world. The sun climbs higher, gilding the village with light. Children's laughter echoes through the narrow streets, mingling with the calls of merchants and the steady clop of hooves on cobblestones. Amid this lively backdrop, the healer prepares for whatever comes next, and you, dear listener, can almost see it now. The smoke rising from chimneys, the bustling market stalls, the worn but sturdy houses leaning companionably against one another. It is a world at once distant and familiar, fragile and enduring. As you breathe deeply, let the image settle around you like a warm cloak. The story, like the day, moves gently forward. By mid-morning, the village is alive with the hum of activity. Market stalls overflow with goods, rough woven linens, baskets of apples, smoked fish, wrapped in fragrant leaves. The air is a chaotic blend of scents, sweet honey cakes mingling with the sharp tang of goat dung and the earthy aroma of freshly turned soil. Somewhere, a baker laughs loudly while haggling with a farmer, and the metallic ring of a blacksmith's hammer punctuates the din like a heartbeat. Inside the healer's hut, the world feels quieter, more deliberate. The healer sits by the window, sorting herbs into neat little piles on a wooden board. Yarrow for wounds, thyme for sore throats, sage for blessings and banishment alike. This ritual of preparation is calming, almost meditative, a small island of order amid the surrounding noise. The next patient to arrive is a young novice monk, his head freshly shaven, his face pale and anxious. He speaks in a whisper, as if afraid the walls themselves might judge him. His ailment is not of the body, but of the mind, forbidden longings. Despite his vows of chastity, he finds himself plagued by desire, a torment that leaves him sleepless and racked with guilt. In the strict world of monastic life, even thoughts could be considered sins. The poor monk's suffering is therefore doubled. Not only does he experience desire, but he also carries crushing shame for having the desire at all. The healer listens with patience, offering no condemnation. Instead, they suggest a treatment both practical and symbolic. The monk is given a pouch of cooling herbs, such as lettuce seeds, violet leaves, and mint to be steeped in water and consumed as a calming tea. These herbs, believed to balance the humors and cool the blood, were often used for those plagued by excessive heat, both literal and metaphorical. Next comes a ritual of redirection. The monk is instructed to channel his restless energy into acts of service, sweeping the monastery floors, tending the garden, copying manuscripts with careful precision. In this way, the body is kept busy, and the mind has less room to wander. It's a medieval form of mindfulness. Though cloaked in religious duty, an obscure cultural tidbit arises here. Some monasteries kept special prayer stones, smooth and perfectly round. When a monk struggled with temptation, he was encouraged to hold the stone during prayer, imagining it absorbing his unwanted thoughts. These stones were sometimes passed down through generations, becoming quiet witnesses to centuries of human frailty and hope. As the monk leaves, visibly calmer, the healer reflects on the delicate dance between desire and discipline. Even in an age of strict rules, the human heart remained wild, beating to its own unruly rhythm. The day moves on, and a wealthy merchant arrives, accompanied by a servant carrying a heavy chest. The merchant's complaint is both physical and deeply humiliating. He suffers from persistent itching, a condition that makes intimacy with his wife nearly impossible. The healer's mind runs through possibilities: poor hygiene, lice, a reaction to the new exotic fabrics the merchant has been importing from distant lands. In medieval times, skin conditions were often blamed on an imbalance of humors or even moral failings. It was believed that sin could manifest physically, marking the body with visible reminders of guilt. The examination is careful and respectful. The healer notices that the merchant's garments are dyed a vibrant shade of red, a color achieved using certain imported minerals known to cause irritation. The diagnosis, then, is both simple and surprisingly modern, a reaction to clothing. The treatment begins with cleansing baths, using warm water infused with soothing herbs like calendula and chamomile. The merchant is also instructed to wear undyed linen until the irritation subsides. While this advice sounds entirely reasonable to us, in the merchant's eyes, it is almost revolutionary. After all, bright colors are a mark of wealth and status. To appear in plain white linen feels like a small social death. To soothe his pride as well as his skin, the healer creates a medicinal ointment scented with rose oil and honey. The honey helps with healing, while the rose oil restores a sense of dignity. The merchant's relief is palpable as he departs, leaving behind a generous donation in thanks. One peculiar historical fact surfaces here. In some medieval towns, public bathhouses doubled as social clubs. People of all classes would gather to bathe, gossip, and even conduct business deals while soaking in herbal-infused tubs. It was, in many ways, a precursor to modern spas, though with considerably more risk of infection. As the heart grows quiet again, the healer allows a moment of stillness. The world outside is bustling, But here, in this small sanctuary, time seems to move at its own gentle pace. The next visitor is a soldier recently returned from war, his armor battered and his expression haunted. Though his body bears only a few scars, his spirit is deeply wounded. He suffers from restless sleep, plagued by visions of battle and loss. Modern listeners might recognize this as trauma, but in the Middle Ages, it was seen through a different lens, sometimes as a spiritual affliction, sometimes as an imbalance of humors. The healer begins with a soothing potion of warm milk, honey, and nutmeg, known for its calming properties. The soldier is also given a sachet of lavender and marjoram to place beneath his pillow. The gentle fragrance meant to ward off troubling dreams. But the most important part of the treatment is storytelling. Each night before sleep, the soldier must tell a tale of something beautiful he has seen. A sunrise over the battlefield, a child's laughter, the song of a bird at dawn. These stories, spoken aloud, help to shift his focus from terror to gratitude, creating a bridge between past and present. An intriguing historical note: some medieval knights believed that wearing a silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon could protect against nightmares. Whether or not it worked, the act of belief itself often provided comfort. As the soldier leaves, his shoulders seem a little less burdened. Healing, after all, is rarely immediate. It is a slow, patient process, like the steady mending of a well-worn cloak. Outside, the village settles deeper into night. Stars bloom in the sky, scattered like seeds across dark soil. The healer stands in the doorway for a moment, breathing in the cool air. There is a sense of continuity here, a rhythm that transcends time. And you, dear listener, can feel it too, the heartbeat of the past, steady and reassuring. Let it guide you deeper into rest as our journey continues, slowly unfolding like the pages of an ancient manuscript. The day is far from over, and the sun is still high, pouring golden light through the window like liquid warmth. The late afternoon brings a softer rhythm to the village. Merchants begin packing up their stalls, calling last-minute bargains to passers-by. Children's laughter fades as they are called home for supper. Even the animals seem to sense the approaching evening, their movements slower, more measured. Inside the healer's hut, the light turns honey gold, catching on the jars and tools, making them glow as if lit from within. It is during these quiet hours that the most secretive patients tend to arrive, those who prefer to slip through the shadows rather than face the curious eyes of the village. Tonight's first visitor is a young woman seeking contraception, a topic so delicate it must be spoken of in whispers. In the Middle Ages, knowledge about pregnancy prevention was limited and often shrouded in superstition. The woman's fear is palpable. An unplanned pregnancy could ruin her life, stripping her of reputation and security. The healer moves carefully, knowing the stakes. They provide the woman with a pouch of pennyroyal and rue, herbs believed to have contraceptive properties. These are to be brewed into a bitter tea, consumed sparingly and with great caution. The exact dosage is critical. Too little, and it may not work. Too much, and it could be dangerously toxic. Alongside this practical remedy, there is also a symbolic one. The woman is instructed to carry a small charm, a tiny carved figure representing fertility, tied with red thread. At night, she must place the charm beneath her pillow, whispering her hopes to it before sleep. Whether or not it has any physical effect, it provides a sense of control in a world that often offers women none. One obscure cultural tidbit: in some medieval villages, women would braid their hair in specific patterns to indicate their marital or reproductive status. A certain braid might signal that a woman was trying to conceive, while another pattern suggested she wished to avoid pregnancy. It was a silent language, understood only by those within the community. As the young woman departs, clutching her charm and her pouch of herbs, the healer feels a pang of empathy. The quiet bravery of those who must navigate their fates in secrecy is a story as old as time. The next visitor of the evening brings a very different energy, a jovial older man, his cheeks ruddy from wine, his laugh booming enough to rattle the dried herbs hanging overhead. His problem, however, is quite serious. He confesses, after much rambling, that he suffers from uncontrollable desire, which has led to more than one embarrassing public incident. In a society deeply concerned with morality and appearances, this behavior is both scandalous and dangerous. The healer must tread carefully, addressing not only the physical symptoms, but also the man's standing in the community. The treatment begins with a cooling regimen. The man is advised to avoid hot foods like garlic, onions, and spiced wine, which were believed to stoke the fires of passion. Instead, he is to eat cooling foods such as lettuce, cucumbers, and barley. He is also given a bath infused with violet leaves and sage, the cool water meant to calm both body and spirit. For particularly intense moments of temptation, he is instructed to press a small iron ring against his wrist, the shock of cold metal acting as a grounding tool. This might sound purely symbolic, but medieval medicine often blended the physical with the metaphorical. The ring represents discipline, a literal circle of control. There's an odd historical note here. In some monasteries, those struggling with desire were required to sleep on cold stone floors. The discomfort meant to curb both temptation and the ego, while this particular man is spared such a drastic measure. The principle remains the same: cooling the excess heat of passion through physical experience. As he leaves, still laughing, but with a hint of thoughtfulness beneath the merriment, the healer reflects on the strange spectrum of human need. Some seek love, others fear it, and still others are simply overwhelmed by it. Outside, the first stars appear in the darkening sky, their light sharp and clear against the velvet backdrop of night. The healer steps to the doorway, breathing in the cool air. Another day has passed, filled with stories and remedies, joys and sorrows. The night stretches ahead, quiet and deep, like an ancient book with many pages yet to turn. The village settles into night once more. Lamps glow softly in windows, their light diffused through wavy panes of glass or thin sheets of horn. The market square lies empty now, save for a few stray cats prowling among overturned baskets. Somewhere, a dog barks half-heartedly, then curls up again beside its master's door. Inside the healer's hut, the space is warm and fragrant, a pocket of comfort against the cool night air. The hearth burns low, casting long shadows that sway gently as if the room itself is breathing. The healer sits on a worn wooden stool, rolling tired shoulders when the door creaks open to reveal tonight's first visitor. It's a young farmer, his hands rough from labor, his expression caught between embarrassment and hope. He clears his throat and explains in halting words that he and his new bride are struggling to conceive. In the fields, his work is straightforward: plant seeds, tend them carefully, harvest in season. But when it comes to his household, the results have been less fruitful. The healer nods, offering a sympathetic smile. Fertility is a frequent concern in this age, when children are not just a blessing, but a necessity. Future farmhands, caretakers, and inheritors of family land. Without them, a family's survival is precarious. The treatment begins with the obvious practical advice: a diet meant to warm the blood and enliven the body. This includes foods like eggs, honey, almonds, and the ever-popular spiced wine. Certain combinations are thought to increase vitality, though whether this is physiological or purely hopeful is difficult to say. Next comes a ritual designed to invite abundance. The couple is instructed to gather at dawn on the next full moon. They will bring a small bundle of wheat, symbolizing fertility, and a cup of goat's milk. At sunrise, they are to sprinkle the wheat around their threshold while drinking the milk together. The act is symbolic, meant to unite their household with the cycles of nature. A peculiar detail adds a touch of whimsy to the ritual. They must keep a tiny bell hidden under their bed, ringing it quietly before intimacy. The sound is said to awaken sleeping spirits and encourage them to bless the union. Historians still debate whether this practice was widespread or simply a quaint superstition from a particular region, but the imagery is undeniably charming. As the farmer leaves, a faint smile plays on his lips. Whether the remedy succeeds or not, he is being given hope, and sometimes that is enough to change a life. The next patient slips in quietly, her hood drawn low over her face. She is a noble woman, her fine fabrics hinting at wealth, even as she tries to appear inconspicuous. Her voice trembles as she speaks of her husband's growing coldness, a distance that chills her to the bone. In a society where marriages are strategic alliances, affection is not always guaranteed, but neglect can still wound deeply. The healer listens carefully, then reaches for a small vial of rose oil, the scent rich and warm. This is to be used sparingly, a single drop placed on each wrist before bed. The aroma is meant to rekindle desire, though it is as much about ritual as chemistry. Alongside this, the healer suggests a shared activity. Each evening, the couple is to walk together beneath the stars, speaking no words, simply breathing in rhythm with one another. This silent communion helps reforge bonds without the weight of conversation. There is also a talismanic element, a piece of woven red thread tied loosely around the wrist, symbolizing connection. When one partner feels distant, they are to touch the thread gently as a reminder of their shared life. While the gesture may seem small, it carries a surprising weight. In a world where symbols often speak louder than words. A curious historical tidbit here: certain medieval texts suggest that couples with strained relationships were encouraged to share a single cup of wine, passing it back and forth while making eye contact. This was seen as both a physical and spiritual act of unity. Whether it worked or not, it undoubtedly made for a memorable evening. The noble woman departs quietly, her posture straighter than when she arrived. Sometimes the promise of change is its own medicine. The healer closes the door and takes a deep breath. Outside, the night hums softly, filled with the quiet rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of prayers from the church. In this delicate balance of ritual and reality, love is tended like a fragile flame. The hours between midnight and dawn are the most mysterious, the time when the world feels half asleep and half alive. The village lies silent now, save for the occasional creak of timber as houses settle into the cool night air. The stars burn bright and cold above, their ancient light indifferent to the tiny dramas unfolding below. The healer, fighting fatigue, sips a small cup of spiced wine to stay alert. These late hours often bring the most unusual cases, those who would rather not be seen entering during the day. The door opens slowly to reveal an aging priest, his robes simple but clean. His hands tremble slightly as he clasps them together. In a low voice, he confesses to feeling unholy desires that conflict with his vows. His anguish is palpable. For him, this is not merely a personal failing, but a spiritual crisis. The healer offers both compassion and practicality. First, a tea made from sage and violet, cooling herbs meant to calm the body's heat. The priest is instructed to drink this each evening while reciting quiet prayers. The act itself becomes a meditative ritual, blending physical treatment with spiritual intention. Next, a task is given. The priest must tend a small herb garden, planting and nurturing life as a way to redirect his energy. This is not framed as punishment, but as healing through care and creation. Over time, the growing plants serve as a living metaphor for his own renewal. An obscure historical note here: in some monasteries, priests struggling with temptation were advised to carve wooden figurines representing their struggles. These figures were then placed on the altar during prayer, a silent acknowledgement of inner conflict. This practice blurred the line between confession and art, creating a tangible form for intangible feelings. The priest departs with gratitude, his steps lighter than when he arrived. The healer watches him go, reflecting on the complexity of human desire. Even in an age of rigid rules, the heart remains unpredictable. As dawn approaches, the sky begins to pale, shifting from deep blue to soft grey. A final patient arrives, a young woman carrying a bundle of linens. She explains that she's newly married, but her husband suffers from crippling anxiety on their wedding nights. The pressure to produce an heir has only intensified his fear. The healer's response is gentle and multi-layered. First, a relaxing bath is prepared, infused with chamomile and marjoram. The husband is to soak in it before bed, letting the warmth ease both muscles and mind. This simple act provides physical comfort and a symbolic cleansing of worry. Next, a storytelling ritual is introduced. Each night, before intimacy, the wife will read aloud a tale of love and courage. These stories are not just distractions, they help create a safe, emotional space, shifting focus from performance to connection. Finally, the healer gives them a shared charm, a small, smooth stone etched with intertwined vines. They are to keep it by their bedside, touching it together each morning as a reminder of unity and patience. A peculiar cultural tidbit: in some medieval villages, couples facing similar struggles were advised to sleep beneath a ceiling hung with fresh greenery, such as ivy or laurel. The greenery symbolized growth and renewal, and its faint fragrance was thought to soothe anxiety. Whether it truly worked is uncertain, but the image is undeniably peaceful. As the first rays of sunlight stream through the window, the healer feels a profound sense of closure. Night has ended, but the work continues, an endless cycle of need and care, of fear and hope. The village awakens slowly, stretching like a living creature, and you, dear listener, drift on the edge of sleep, carrying these stories with you like softly glowing lanterns in the dark. The morning sun spills across the fields like warm honey, glistening on dew-covered grass and rooftops still damp from the night's mist. The village is already stirring, farmers coaxing reluctant oxen into motion, bakers pulling fragrant loaves from wood-fired ovens, and children darting underfoot like mischievous sprites. The air is a blend of scents: fresh bread, tilled earth, smoke, and the faint sweetness of apples stored for winter. Inside the healer's hut, the day begins anew. The room feels refreshed after the long night, its shelves neatly arranged, its floor swept clean. The healer takes a moment to breathe deeply, centering themselves before the inevitable stream of patience. This moment of quiet is fleeting, a fragile pause before the demands of the world arrive. The first visitor of the day is an elderly woman, stooped and trembling, leaning heavily on a carved wooden cane. She is a midwife by trade, though her own childbearing years are long past. Her voice, though thin, carries both authority and weariness. She speaks of her failing memory, her fear that she will forget the ancient knowledge entrusted to her by generations of women before her. If I cannot remember, she whispers, then the village will lose its wisdom. The healer listens with grave respect. In a time before written manuals and standardized medical texts, the knowledge held by midwives was both precious and fragile. To forget even a single remedy could mean tragedy during childbirth. The treatment for memory loss blends physical care with ritual. The healer prepares a tea of rosemary and sage, herbs believed to sharpen the mind. Rosemary, in particular, was symbolic of remembrance and was often woven into bridal wreaths to honor the past while looking to the future. The ritual element is equally important. Each evening, the midwife is to sit by the fire and recite aloud the names of every child she has delivered, calling them back to memory like a protective spell. The sound of these names, carried on the night air, binds her to the community she has served so faithfully. An obscure but fascinating tidbit: in some medieval villages, midwives were buried with small bundles of dried herbs sewn into their burial shrouds, a final acknowledgement of their role as guardians of life. These herbs were meant to guide them safely into the next world while symbolizing their earthly legacy. As the midwife departs steadier now, the healer feels a pang of reverence. Some forms of healing transcend the body. They touch the very soul of a community. The next patient arrives in a flurry of silk and perfume, a wealthy nobleman, clearly unused to waiting in humble surroundings. His complaint is surprisingly down to earth, persistent aches and stiffness that worsen after long journeys on horseback. The healer examines him with care. In the Middle Ages, such complaints might be attributed to blockages in the humors or even to malevolent influences picked up along the road. The treatment, however, is refreshingly practical. The nobleman is given heated compresses infused with marjoram and thyme, applied to sore muscles to ease pain and improve circulation. He is also taught simple stretches to be performed at dawn and dusk. Though the concept of exercise as therapy was not widespread, some medieval healers recognized the value of gentle movement. The nobleman scoffs at first, but when told that knights in distant lands performed similar rituals to maintain their strength, he reluctantly agrees to try. For the spiritual side of his discomfort, the healer prescribes a protective charm, a small carved talisman of oak, worn around the neck during travel. Oak, with its strength and resilience, symbolizes safe passage. Whether or not the charm has mystical properties, it offers psychological comfort, a powerful medicine in its own right. A quirky cultural note here: in certain medieval courts, nobles believed that wearing emerald rings could ward off fatigue and improve vitality. While there's no evidence to support this, emeralds remained a popular accessory, blending fashion with superstition in a way that would make any modern wellness influencer proud. As the nobleman departs, clutching his talisman and muttering about stretches, the healer allows themselves a small smile. Healing, it seems, often requires as much persuasion as medicine. The day continues, each patient bringing their own story. A young mother seeks help for her baby's colic. A shepherd limps in with a twisted ankle, smelling faintly of sheep. A traveling peddler arrives with a cough that makes the healer's brow furrow with concern. Each encounter is a thread woven into the complex tapestry of village life. By late afternoon, the healer pauses to look out the window. The sun hangs low, bathing the fields in golden light. The village seems peaceful, almost timeless. Yet beneath this calm surface lie countless struggles, joys, and quiet acts of courage. And you, dear listener, are part of this world now. As you breathe deeply, imagine the soft sounds of the village, the clatter of hooves, the chatter of merchants, the distant toll of a church bell. Let them blend into a soothing lullaby, carrying you deeper into the story as day gives way to night once more. Evening falls gently, like a velvet curtain drawn across the stage of the village. The sky deepens to a rich indigo, streaked with the last fiery remnants of sunset. Smoke rises from chimneys in lazy spirals, carrying with it the comforting sense of stew and baked bread. The market square lies mostly empty now, save for a few lingering conversations and the occasional stray chicken being chased home. Inside the healer's hut, the atmosphere shifts. The bright busyness of day gives way to the quiet intimacy of night. A single lamp burns, its light soft and golden, casting familiar shadows on the walls. This is the time for private matters, for confessions spoken in low voices and remedies given with utmost discretion. The first visitor of the evening is a miller's wife, her face etched with worry. She explains that her husband has grown distant and distracted, spending long hours at the mill and offering little affection at home. She fears he may be straying, or worse, losing his love for her entirely. The healer's approach here is both practical and symbolic. A love charm is prepared, a small pouch containing dried rose petals, cinnamon, and a scrap of parchment on which the couple's initials are carefully inscribed. The wife is instructed to hide the charm beneath the bed, where its sweet influence will seep into the household. Alongside this, the healer recommends a shared activity to rekindle closeness. Each night, the couple is to light a single candle together and sit silently, watching its flame until it burns low. The candle represents their union, fragile yet capable of enduring if tended carefully. A curious historical tidbit. In some medieval villages, women would weave miniature figurines of straw, placing them near the hearth as symbols of domestic harmony. If the figurines fell over during the night, it was taken as a sign of discord. Whether this was taken seriously or simply served as a conversation starter is anyone's guess. The miller's wife departs with hope in her eyes, her steps lighter than when she arrived. Sometimes love requires nothing more than intention made visible. The night deepens, wrapping the village in a blanket of stillness. Even the usual nighttime sounds, the lowing of cattle, the creak of carts settling into the earth, the occasional burst of laughter from the tavern, fade into a hushed quiet. The only constant is the rhythmic chirp of crickets and the soft rush of the river as it flows beyond the fields, silver in the moonlight. Inside the healer's hut, the warm glow of lamplight contrasts with the cool darkness outside. The air smells faintly of thyme and wood smoke, comforting and familiar. The healer sits cross-legged on a low stool, sorting dried herbs into small clay jars, when a timid knock at the door breaks the silence. The visitor is a young apprentice blacksmith, his hands blackened from work and his face red with embarrassment. He confesses, after much fumbling, that he suffers from a burning pain when he urinates, a likely sign of an infection, though in medieval times the cause would have been a mystery. Such ailments were often attributed to corrupted humors, divine punishment, or even curses cast by spurned lovers. The healer's response is measured. First, a tea of goldenrod and nettle is prepared, believed to cleanse the body of impurities. The young man is instructed to drink it daily while avoiding heavy foods like salted pork and aged cheese, which were thought to worsen the imbalance of humors. Next, a ritual is prescribed to address the spiritual aspect of the ailment. At sunrise, he must walk to the river and wash his hands and face 3 times, then whisper a short prayer while standing barefoot on the riverbank. The act symbolizes purification, both physical and emotional. An obscure medieval tidbit comes to light here. In some villages, blacksmiths were seen as semi-magical figures, their work with fire and metal giving them an aura of power. Because of this, ailments affecting blacksmiths were sometimes believed to have supernatural origins, requiring not just medicine but also protective charms. The healer gives him a small iron amulet to wear around his neck, shaped like a tiny horseshoe, a gesture that blends practicality and superstition. The apprentice leaves, looking relieved. Whether the tea or the ritual proves effective remains to be seen, but hope itself is often the first step toward healing. Later that evening, another patient arrives, a widower in his middle years, carrying a small cloth bundle. He speaks softly of loneliness, of nights so quiet they seem to echo. Since his wife's passing, he has found himself plagued by phantom sensations, the feeling of her presence beside him, the memory of her touch, so vivid it borders on pain. In a world steeped in spiritual belief, such experiences are not dismissed as mere imagination. They are seen as signs that the veil between worlds is thin, that love itself lingers after death. The healer offers both comfort and guidance. A simple remedy is prepared: a warm drink of milk, honey, and crushed almond, meant to nourish the body and calm the mind. Alongside this, a ritual of release is suggested. The widower must take a piece of fabric that once belonged to his wife, soak it in rosewater, and bury it beneath a flowering tree. As he does so, he is to speak words of farewell, acknowledging both his love and his need to move forward. This ritual is not meant to sever the bond, but to transform it, allowing grief to settle into memory rather than consume the living. A fascinating historical note: in some regions, widowers were encouraged to keep a small candle burning at night, representing the spirit of their lost loved one. If the flame flickered unusually or went out suddenly, it was believed to signal the deceased's blessing or, occasionally, their displeasure. Such beliefs provided structure for the chaotic experience of mourning. As the widower departs, a quiet peace seems to settle over the hut. The healer sits for a moment in silence, watching the shadows dance on the walls. In the delicate balance between past and present, between memory and hope, there is a kind of healing that transcends words. Outside, the night grows colder, the stars sharp and clear against the black sky. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls, a lonely sound that fades into stillness. The healer pulls a woolen cloak tighter around their shoulders and steps to the doorway, breathing in the crisp air. It is in these small, solitary moments that the healer feels most connected to the world, the needs of the body, the mysteries of the spirit, the ceaseless rhythm of life. They are all part of the same intricate dance, and you, dear listener, can feel it too as you lie in your own bed, the weight of the blankets grounding you. Let your breath slow. Imagine the healer's world shimmering just beyond the veil of sleep, a reminder that the human heart has always sought comfort in the dark. Dawn begins to stretch its pale fingers across the horizon, turning the night sky a gentle grey. The first birds stir in the trees, their songs tentative at first, then swelling into a chorus of mourning. Smoke rises from chimneys as households rouse themselves for another day of work and worry. The healer, bleary-eyed but determined, tends to the hearth fire and prepares for the day ahead. There is no true end to the work, only brief pauses between cycles of care. The first patient of the morning is a carpenter, his hands calloused, his brow furrowed. He complains of pain in his joints, particularly after long hours of labor. In an age without modern understanding of arthritis, such ailments were often attributed to damp humors or the influence of cold, wet weather. The treatment combines warmth and symbolism. A poultice of mustard seeds and honey is applied to the affected joints, wrapped in strips of linen to hold in heat. The carpenter is also advised to keep a small carved piece of oak in his pocket, a charm representing strength and endurance. A quirky historical tidbit: in some villages, workers with aching joints were told to walk backward across a bridge at sunrise, leaving their pain behind them. Whether this had any effect beyond amusing the local children is debatable, but the practice persisted for generations. As the carpenter leaves, flexing his hands experimentally, the healer reflects on how much of medieval medicine relied on the power of metaphor. Sometimes, believing in a cure was half the battle. The next visitor is a young woman with a secret. Her cheeks are flushed as she explains that she has been meeting a lover in secret, but now she fears discovery. Worse, she believes that someone has cast a curse upon her to expose her misdeeds. She describes strange happenings: a bird tapping at her window each night, milk curdling unexpectedly, her name whispered in the wind. The healer listens carefully. In this era, curses and enchantments are not mere superstition. They are a framework for understanding the inexplicable, whether or not the curse is real. The woman's fear is very real indeed. The remedy is as much performance as medicine. A cleansing ritual is prescribed. At dusk, the woman must walk to a crossroads carrying 3 small stones. She will place 1 stone at each path and whisper her secret to it, leaving her fear behind with each step. When she returns home, she must sprinkle salt around her doorway and light a candle, symbolically sealing her space against further harm. Alongside this, the healer gives her a sachet of protective herbs, rosemary, sage, and rue. These are to be carried close to her body at all times. The scent alone, sharp and clean, provides a sense of security. An interesting historical note: crossroads held great significance in medieval culture. They were seen as places where different worlds intersected: the physical, the spiritual, the known, and the unknown. Many rituals of protection or banishment took place there, blurring the line between geography and symbolism. The woman leaves with a mixture of relief and determination. Whether the ritual banishes an actual curse or simply calms her heart, the result is the same: she feels safe again. As the day progresses, the healer tends to a steady stream of patients: a boy with a scraped knee, an elderly couple seeking advice on preserving food for winter, a group of laughing children who bring a stray kitten for examination. Each encounter adds another stitch to the tapestry of village life. By late afternoon, the sun slants low, painting everything in golden light. The healer pauses to sip a cup of nettle tea, reflecting on the stories gathered over countless days and nights. The remedies may change, but the essence remains the same. A yearning for wholeness, for understanding, for care. Outside, the fields glow like embers beneath the fading sun, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the stars wait patiently for their turn to shine. Twilight returns, soft and gradual, like a beloved old quilt being draped across the land. The sky melts from gold to violet to a deep velvet blue, and the first stars blink awake, shy at first, then bold and countless. A cool breeze stirs the trees, carrying the mingled scents of hearth smoke and freshly tilled earth. The village exhales, settling into the rhythm of evening, the clatter of supper bowls, the low murmur of evening prayers, the distant laughter of children playing one last game before bed. Inside the healer's hut, the day's tools have been tidied and stored away. Herbs hang in neat bundles, glowing softly in the lamplight. The room feels almost ceremonial now, as though preparing itself for the final act of a long performance. The healer wipes their hands on a clean linen cloth and sits by the fire, knowing that nighttime patients often bring the most delicate troubles. The door opens slowly, and in slips a young mother clutching a baby, her eyes red, rimmed from sleeplessness. She speaks in a voice edged with panic. The baby, though healthy by appearance, cries endlessly at night, inconsolable despite every effort. The mother fears that a spirit, or perhaps an ill-wisher's curse, has marked the child. The healer takes the baby gently, rocking it with practiced ease. First comes the practical examination, checking for signs of illness or injury. Finding none, they move on to soothing remedies. A soft linen cloth is soaked in warm chamomile tea and used to massage the baby's tiny limbs. Chamomile, with its calming properties, has been trusted for centuries to ease both body and mind. Next comes a ritual of protection. The healer sprinkles a few grains of salt in the corners of the room and hangs a sprig of rosemary above the cradle. This, they explain, will create a safe boundary, keeping restless spirits at bay. The mother is also given a lullaby, its words old and half forgotten, passed down through generations. Singing, the healer says, binds love into sound, and love is the most potent charm of all. An obscure historical tidbit fits here. In some medieval households, a small iron key was placed beneath a baby's pillow, symbolizing the family's hope to lock out evil and unlock a future of safety. Whether it worked or not, it gave parents something tangible to hold on to during long, fretful nights. As the baby drifts into a rare, peaceful sleep, the mother's shoulders sag with relief. She thanks the healer, tears of gratitude glimmering in the firelight. When she departs, she leaves behind a quiet that feels almost sacred. The hut remains still for a while, the healer savoring the calm, but soon another visitor arrives, a young scribe, his ink-stained fingers betraying his trade. He speaks of an unusual problem. His work has begun to haunt his dreams. Night after night, he dreams of words chasing him, phages multiplying endlessly, parchment fluttering like wings. He wakes exhausted, unable to tell if he is working or merely dreaming of work. The healer listens with interest. In this era, dreams are seen as messages from beyond, not simply the brain's nightly housekeeping. The scribe's condition is interpreted as a sign of imbalance between body, mind, and spirit. The treatment blends practicality with metaphor. First, the scribe is instructed to rest his eyes and hands each evening by immersing them in cool water infused with lavender. This simple act refreshes the senses and creates a clear boundary between day and night. Second, he must perform a ritual of release. Each night before bed, he is to burn a single scrap of parchment, watching the smoke rise, while silently imagining his worries lifting away with it. This small act turns intangible stress into visible transformation. A fascinating historical note. Some medieval scribes believed that writing certain holy words backward on a scrap of paper could banish nightmares. These papers were then tucked under pillows or sewn into clothing as protective charms. Whether or not it worked, the practice highlights the deep reverence medieval society held for the written word. As the scribe departs, his posture straighter and his steps lighter, the healer reflects on how deeply story's shape lives. Words are powerful medicine, and sometimes they are also the ailment. Outside, night deepens. The stars gleam bright and cold above the quiet village. From a distance, the healer's hut looks like a single warm ember in the dark, a fragile beacon of care and hope. The healer sits alone now, sipping a cup of nettle tea. Tomorrow will bring new faces and new troubles, but for this moment, there is peace. The world seems to hold its breath, balanced between endings and beginnings, darkness and light. And you, dear listener, may feel that same balance. Let it cradle you like a lullaby as the story winds towards its final chapter. The final dawn rises slow and golden, spilling over the fields like warm honey. Mist curls above the river, ghostly and delicate. While the rooftops of the village glisten with dew, the world awakens gently, as though reluctant to disturb the fragile beauty of the morning. Inside the healer's hut, preparations for the day begin. Herbs are checked, tools laid out, water boiled over the hearth. This space, so small and humble, has been the heart of countless stories, each remedy a thread woven into the fabric of the community. The first and last visitor of this chapter is a young couple, hand in hand, faces aglow with nervous excitement. They have come not for a cure, but for a blessing. After years of seeking help for their struggles, intimacy, fertility, trust, they now wish to start anew, leaving old pain behind. The healer smiles warmly. The ceremony is simple yet deeply symbolic. The couple kneels before a small bowl of water infused with rosemary and rose petals. Each dips a hand into the water, then places it over the other's heart. As they do, the healer recites words both ancient and tender, a reminder that love is not a constant state, but a choice renewed daily. They are given a small woven charm of red and white threads, representing passion and purity. This will hang above their bed as a reminder of balance. The couple departs with tears in their eyes and hope in their hearts. Their footsteps echoing softly in the dawn. After they leave, the healer takes a long, slow breath. The hut is empty now, yet filled with the echoes of countless lives. On these worn floorboards, laughter and grief have mingled. On these shelves, herbs have stood as silent witnesses to centuries of care. Outside, the village stirs fully awake. Farmers call to their animals. Merchants open their stores. Children chase each other through sunlit streets. Life continues, endlessly renewing itself. The healer steps outside, feeling the sun's warmth on their face. There is no true ending here, only the turning of the wheel, the eternal rhythm of need and healing. And you, dear listener, have been part of this story. You have walked the cobblestone streets, smelled the rosemary and smoke, felt the hush of midnight and the glow of dawn. These tales, though ancient, live on because we carry them in our hearts. Now, as you lie in the quiet of your own room, let the story fade like mist at sunrise. Imagine the village shrinking gently into the distance, its houses glowing softly like embers. Hear the last faint notes of a lullaby drifting through the cool morning air. Your breath slows. Inhale deeply, drawing in calm. Exhale, releasing tension. Again, slowly, gently. The healer's hut becomes a small point of light, then disappears entirely, leaving only peace. The problems, the remedies, the laughter and the tears all dissolve into stillness. There is nothing to solve now, nothing to fix, only the slow, soothing rhythm of your own heartbeat, steady and sure. As you drift towards sleep, know that the stories of the past are like soft blankets. They warm us, protect us, and remind us that we are never truly alone. The same hopes and fears that stirred the hearts of those medieval villagers echo in us today, binding us to them across the centuries. The night stretches before you, deep and calm. Let go. Float gently into dreams, where love and healing wait like old friends, and where the quiet magic of history hums softly beneath the surface of your rest.